I always thought betrayal would be loud, explosive, a screaming match in a parking lot, maybe, or a shattered wine glass on the kitchen floor. But the first time I sensed it, really sensed it, it was quiet, unnervingly quiet. That Friday evening started like any other. I'd spent most of the day aboard a supply vessel docked just outside Charleston, running diagnostics on the main propulsion system. It was tedious work. Lots of grease, heat, and noise. The kind of job that makes you smell like metal and ocean for hours after. All I wanted was a shower, dinner, and maybe a movie on the couch with Amy. Nothing fancy, just normal. But the second I stepped into the house, I knew something was off. At first, it was subtle. The house smelled faintly of jasmine and seared meat. Not unusual on its own. Amy liked candles, and she'd recently started dabbling in cooking again. But the combination felt misplaced. Then I saw the wine bottle. It sat open on the counter, still sweating from the fridge. A crisp-looking Sauvignon Blanc. 2 glasses sat nearby, one half full, the other nearly empty. I picked up the fuller one and brought it to my nose. It was chilled, sharp, fresh. Definitely opened recently. Amy doesn't drink white wine. Not because she can't, but because she claims it gives her migraines. Her go-to is red, something earthy. She even rolls her eyes at people who order Pinot Grigio at restaurants. But here was a bottle of white, just sitting there. And not a cheap one, either. It was a vintage we'd picked up once for a dinner party. The kind of bottle you don't casually crack open unless you're trying to impress someone. Then I noticed the plates. 2 dinner plates, each with the remnants of what looked like pan-seared steak, garlic mashed potatoes, and grilled asparagus. Still warm. There were 2 knives and 2 forks resting on folded napkins, like someone had set the table with care. Whoever had been here hadn't just dropped in. They'd stayed for dinner. A real one. And then my eyes landed on the cup. It was one of our ceramic mugs. The blue one Amy always used when she wanted something to feel cozy. But this one had a faint lipstick mark on the rim. Deep red. Darker than anything Amy owned. She barely wears lipstick at all. Certainly not that shade. I stared at the mug for a long minute before gently setting it back down. The ceramic clinked softly on the counter, but the sound might as well have been a siren in my ears. I stood there for a beat, letting it all soak in. Wine, dinner for 2, lipstick on a mug. That's when I heard her. She came into the kitchen from the hallway, wiping her hands on a dish towel, her hair up in a messy bun. A plain t-shirt clinging to her like she just changed out of something more formal. She froze for a second when she saw me. Just half a second, barely enough for most people to catch. But I did. "Zach," she said, surprised. "Didn't expect you so early. I thought you were staying in Charleston overnight." "I wrapped up faster than expected," I said slowly. "Didn't feel like sitting in traffic." She nodded and offered a quick, tense smile. I motioned to the counter. "You had company?" "Oh, yeah," she said too quickly. "Mia stopped by. She's been under the weather, so I cooked her something. She didn't eat much, though." "Mia," I repeated. "She's still wearing that dark red lipstick?" Amy blinked. I guess so. I didn't really notice." I tilted my head. "She used your shampoo too?" "What?" "There's a towel in the bathroom, wet. Not yours. And one of your silk blouses is missing." Her expression flickered, just a touch. "She got soup on hers. I lent her something. What's the big deal?" I didn't answer. Not because I didn't have one, but because something in her tone gave me pause. It wasn't just defensive, it was rehearsed. Her hands were steady, her eyes alert. She wasn't scrambling for an excuse. She already had one. That's what struck me. Amy wasn't a great liar. She didn't need to be. But this felt polished. Like she'd thought through this scenario already. We stood in silence for a moment too long. Then she turned away, placing the dish towel back on the hook like nothing happened. "I'm gonna hop in the shower," she said over her shoulder. "Want to order in something? I'm not hungry, but I could snack." I nodded slowly, trying to keep my voice even. "Sure. Thai. Sounds good," she said, already halfway up the stairs. As I heard the water start upstairs, I walked into the living room. The throw pillows on the couch had been fluffed. The remote was tucked away. Normally, Amy leaves a small mess. Coffee mugs, a book half open, a blanket kicked to one side. But the room was spotless, like she'd cleaned up after a guest. I sat on the edge of the couch, staring at nothing. The hum of the refrigerator and the faint splatter of the shower water were the only sounds. My mind replayed the moment at the kitchen counter over and over. Her voice, her posture, that fraction of hesitation when I asked about the blouse. It all stacked up like evidence in a trial I didn't know I was conducting until now. I didn't say anything that night. I didn't press her. I went through the motions, ordered Thai, made small talk, kissed her goodnight. But I barely slept. I just lay there, eyes open, staring at the ceiling fan as it turned slowly above us. And somewhere in the back of my mind, a quiet voice whispered, something's wrong. Something's really, really wrong. After that night, it was like something had been switched on inside me, some instinct I'd been suppressing for too long. Once you suspect the truth, even a passing glance starts to feel like a warning sign. You notice everything. I didn't confront Amy right away. I wasn't ready for a fight. What I needed was clarity. Proof. So instead, I watched. Quietly. Closely. In that silence, patterns started emerging, memories I had brushed off at the time but now carried new weight. Like that business trip she took to Seattle last month. She was gone for 6 days. Supposedly at a tech conference for female entrepreneurs, a big one she'd been invited to last minute. She was proud of it. Posted a photo of her name badge on Instagram. But when I tried to FaceTime her that Thursday night, she didn't pick up. Not the next morning either. Just a few delayed texts, sorry, busy panels, and talk soon, love you. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? We'd been married 8 years. We shared everything, or so I thought. But after the wine and lipstick incident, I remembered something about that trip. When she came home, her suitcase looked untouched. Clothes still folded, makeup bags unopened. She told me she'd lived in sweats the whole time. But if that were true, why had she packed that black cocktail dress? And where were the photos? Amy usually floods her stories with panels, badges, coffee cups, selfies with other women in blazers. But for this trip? Just that single badge photo? Nothing else. I began looking deeper. It didn't take long to find more things that didn't add up. There was the letter from the insurance company addressed to both of us. I remember it because I opened it by mistake. Her name was listed first, and I didn't look closely before tearing the envelope. It was a beneficiary update form already processed. Someone named Douglas Spinner had been added as a contingent beneficiary on her personal policy. I assumed it was a clerical error or a colleague's name accidentally inserted. But when I asked her about it, she barely blinked. Oh, it's just a lawyer thing, she'd said, waving it off. I needed a temp name for legal compliance or something. I'll fix it. She never did. Our joint bank account started showing weird withdrawals, too. Charges labeled consulting, service retainers, and LLC prep. None of them matched anything we were involved in. I didn't say anything at first, thinking maybe it was startup stuff, her company was growing, and sometimes she used our joint card if hers glitched. But the amounts were strange. Repeated $900 and $1,200 charges spaced 10 days apart. I brought it up once, half joking. Hey, we investing in something you forgot to tell me about? She smiled without looking up from her phone. Just boring legal junk, babe. Tax prep. She always had an answer. Always just enough to keep me from pushing. But the house was changing too. The framed photos of us, our wedding in Tybee, the trip to Italy, the snapsh *T of us kissing in front of the Grand Canyon started disappearing. One by one. At first, I thought she was redecorating. Amy liked rotating things for seasons. But then I checked the hallway closet where she stored in used frames. They weren't there. Gone. So were some of her books from college. Her old journals. A gold bracelet her mom gave her. I couldn't shake the feeling she wasn't just tidying up. She was erasing us. Emotionally, she had already left. I could feel it. She wasn't cruel or mean. In fact, that was the strange part. She was oddly polite. Cordial. Like someone trying not to offend a guest. She'd ask how my day was, but never listened to the answer. She laughed at things I said, but not with her eyes. She stopped touching me, no hugs, no quick kisses at the door, no more slipping her hand into mine during a movie. She used to sleep with her legs tangled in mine. Now we lay like strangers, a foot of space between us, her back always turned. Her phone never left her side. Ever. It used to charge on the nightstand. Now it went into the bathroom with her. She took it on jogs, tucked in her waistband, even for 10-minute stretches around the block. She'd glance at it during dinner, silencing notifications without unlocking the screen. One time I walked past her office and saw her quickly flip it over when I entered. She smiled too quickly. "Just spam," she said. I nodded, but I felt that cold throb in my gut, the one that whispers, "Don't ignore this." Still, I waited, watched, listened. A few days later, I checked the Find My app on our shared iPad. Amy had never turned off location sharing. I hadn't used it in years, mostly just when we lost phones or she forgot where she parked. But that day, I checked out of instinct. She was on the other side of town, parked near the industrial district. Not a place with restaurants or boutiques, just private offices, low-rise rentals, and storage lots. She said she was at a marketing lunch. When she got home, I asked casually, "You try that new Thai place with your team?" Her eyes flickered, just slightly. "Yeah," she said too quickly. But the pad Thai was weird, too sweet. I smiled. I'd been to that Thai place before. They don't serve pad Thai, not even on the secret menu. That night, as she showered, I opened her closet again. The silk blouse I'd noticed missing days earlier, still gone. But now her red heels were gone too. The ones she only wore on dates. The black lace bodysuit I bought her for our anniversary last year? Nowhere to be found. She wasn't preparing for a break. She was preparing for a double life. I stood in the dim hallway, staring at her closed door, listening to the water run, and felt something inside me fracture. Not break completely, not yet, but weaken. This wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was certainty. Something had happened. Something was happening. I didn't know who he was, not yet. I didn't know how long or how far it had gone. But I knew my wife was no longer mine. Not in her mind, not in her heart, and maybe not even legally, if that insurance letter meant what I thought it did. And I wasn't going to sit in the dark much longer. I didn't make a sound when I finally decided to confirm the truth. No dramatic confrontation, no shouting. I just did what I knew how to do. Plan, observe, and act with precision. The same SK*LLS I used in my work, I now turned inward. Amy had no idea I could access our vehicle's GPS history. It was a built-in service, one we used once when her car got towed, and she forgot the login afterward. I didn't. That Friday evening, she told me she was staying overnight with a friend, Monica, from her running group. Claimed they were doing a women's wellness retreat, complete with vision boards, detox smoothies, and some book about embracing feminine energy. She even packed a yoga mat. I smiled, nodded, and told her to enjoy herself. An hour after she left, I opened the GPS portal and watched the signal on the map. Her car drove 35 minutes north, far from Monica's place. It didn't go anywhere near the wellness center she'd mentioned the week before. Instead, it turned into a private road, past a vineyard and toward a gated community of high-end villas, places with names like the Ravines and Stonecrest Estates. I zoomed in. The vehicle had parked behind a secluded villa surrounded by tall hedges. No streetlights, no neighbors in sight. The car stayed there for 3 hours and 48 minutes. I didn't call her, didn't text. Instead, I drove. I didn't know what I was expecting. A gut check, a quick glimpse. But when I pulled up to the entrance of the villa and parked just down the road, what I got was clarity. Pure, awful clarity. The villa was surrounded by a wrought iron fence with vines creeping up the sides. I moved to a spot between hedges where the sightlines opened just enough. I saw her. Amy stepped out of a small heated pool on the side patio, wrapped in a white towel. Her hair was soaked, dripping onto her shoulders. She held a wine glass, white of course, and was laughing. Not a polite chuckle or strained giggle, but a deep, full laugh I hadn't heard from her in months. A man followed behind her. He was tall, lean, well-groomed. Mid-40s, maybe older, with sharp features and a kind of effortless confidence that radiated from the way he stood. He wrapped an arm around her waist. She didn't flinch. She leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. They kissed. Not quickly, not nervously. They kissed like people with nothing to hide. I watched for 10 minutes. That was all I could stomach. My hands didn't shake. My heart didn't race. The numbness had taken over by then. I pulled out my phone and started recording. It felt surreal, like I was documenting someone else's life unraveling. But the camera didn't lie. Amy, the man, the towel, the laughter, the wine, all of it. When I got home that night, I didn't cry. I didn't scream or throw things. I sat down at my desk, opened our joint accounts, and began untangling our lives. First, I revoked her access to every credit card and financial portal tied to my name. I locked the safe in the bedroom and changed the combination. I removed her as a power of attorney and emergency contact on all legal, medical, and business records. She wouldn't know it yet, but I had also transferred ownership of the boat we jointly owned back to my name through an old clause we'd added just in case. It had seemed paranoid at the time. Now it felt prophetic. I even printed out all our shared tax documents and legal agreements. I needed a clear trail. Not for her. For me. If this was war, I wasn't walking into it with a blindfold. When Amy came back the next afternoon, she smelled like hotel soap and mint toothpaste. Said Monica's wellness retreat was invigorating. Said she felt recentered. I nodded. That's great, babe. She smiled. You okay? Yeah, I said. I just caught up on some reading. She kissed my cheek and said she was going to shower. I told her to take her time. The next 2 days were quiet. Suspiciously so. She was overly affectionate. Started asking about my work. Offered to cook. Even suggested we take a trip, just the two of us, in the fall. Somewhere warm, she said. Somewhere peaceful. I listened. I smiled. I nodded. Then came Wednesday. She had a major board meeting scheduled that morning. Her startup was pitching to a new investor, a big deal she'd been prepping for all month. She wore the missing silk blouse that had vanished 2 weeks earlier, paired with sharp heels and an old gold necklace I hadn't seen in a while. She looked like someone who had already won. And maybe she had. She thought I didn't know. She thought she was playing me. At noon, I called her co-founder and informed them I would be withdrawing all future support from the company. I was the largest silent investor, something Amy had conveniently neglected to share with most of the team. I'd kept my name off the papers at her request to avoid power imbalance optics. That power imbalance was now working in my favor. Within 3 hours, the investment platform locked her company's funding streams. Vendor contracts flagged. Salaries frozen. Legal notices prepared. I didn't show up at the office. I didn't need to. That night, she came home later than usual. Quiet. Empty-handed. Her face pale. No small talk. No attempt at warmth. Something happened with the company, she said finally. I nodded. I know. She blinked. You do. I stood up, walked to the kitchen counter, and opened a small envelope I had placed there earlier. Inside was a photo. Just one. Printed on glossy paper. Amy, poolside, towel-wrapped, smiling. The man, arm around her waist. I slid it across the counter to her. She stared at it for a full minute. Said nothing. Then she looked up at me, her face hollow. How long have you known? Long enough, I said. Long enough to protect what's mine. And with that, I walked out. Not out of the marriage. Not yet. But out of the illusion. There's a difference between revenge and justice. Revenge is hot, reckless, it burns fast, and usually scorches the one holding the torch. Justice is cold. Methodical. It doesn't care about satisfaction. Only outcome. Amy thought she was in control. She believed she had every angle covered, every lie sealed tight with plausible excuses and soft tones. But what she didn't know, or maybe had forgotten, was that I wasn't built like other men she could manipulate. I fix engines for a living. I solve problems with tools and data and silence. I don't rage. I don't scream. I measure. I calculate. And when I act, it's clean. The morning after I slid that photo across the counter, I went back to the marina and put in a full shift. Not because I had to, but because routine keeps your mind sharp. I stripped a turbocharger, replaced a corroded pump, helped a junior tech recalibrate his readings. My crew asked nothing about Amy. They sensed the tension and kept their distance. I appreciated that. But during lunch, I made 2 calls. First was to my attorney, Garrett Sloan. We'd worked together years ago when I purchased a shipyard parcel. Sharp guy, straightforward, quiet. I told him I wanted to begin documenting grounds for separation and that I needed to secure all business and personal assets under my name. He didn't ask why. Just said, already ahead of you. The second call was to a private forensic accountant, a woman named Ivy who had helped a buddy of mine during a messy divorce. She specialized in unearthing hidden transfers, dummy corporations, shadow accounts. If Amy had moved anything offshore or hidden it behind business entities, Ivy would find it. While they got to work, I played the part at home. I didn't withdraw emotionally. I didn't accuse. That's what she expected, meltdowns, confrontation, maybe even begging. But I gave her nothing but surface-level peace. She started being domestic again. Cooking more. Asking about my schedule. Even wore the necklace I got her for our 5th anniversary like it could bridge the gap she'd blown through. Every action felt scripted, like she was trying to rewrite the character she thought I needed her to be. But I wasn't reading her script anymore. Then came the board gala. Amy had been planning it for months, a formal event meant to dazzle investors and court the media. She reserved a rooftop venue in downtown Savannah, invited the regional business elite, and was scheduled to give the keynote address. It was her triumphant return after a year of growth, funding, and press. I hadn't planned to attend. I didn't need to. But that changed when I saw the promotional flyer online. Her face front and center, smiling like the betrayal never happened. The theme? Built to last. Ironic. I put on my tailored navy suit and arrived 30 minutes after the opening. The place was all glass, candlelight, and pretension. I knew half the room: dock owners, shipping contractors, marine suppliers. People who had respected me for years but never knew the full extent of my investments. Amy didn't see me right away. She was too busy basking in compliments, drinking wine, posing for photos. I stood near the back, sipping soda water, watching her rehearse charm. Then she stepped onto the stage. She started her speech with a joke about the tech world being too soft for real labor. Then she smirked and said, "My husband's a marine engineer. A grease monkey, basically. He thinks a server is someone who brings you food." The room chuckled. I didn't flinch. I simply pulled out my phone, opened the investor dashboard Ivy had compiled for me, and tapped the suspend disbursement button. A red lock symbol appeared next to every funding stream tied to her startup. 30 seconds later, her phone vibrated in her hand. She glanced down mid-sentence. Then again. Her voice faltered. 2 board members seated near the front checked their own phones. One stood up and walked out. A sponsor from Atlanta followed. The room shifted, murmurs spreading like smoke. Amy kept speaking, trying to regain control, but she was reading from a script and the teleprompter had just caught fire. I stepped forward as she stepped down. Her eyes locked onto mine. Wide. Confused. Searching. I didn't say a word. Just handed her a small manila envelope. Inside was a short letter terminating my financial backing, a legal freeze notice on her personal credit, and a copy of the photo. Her fingers trembled as she unfolded the paper. Then I turned and walked out. No shouting. No scene. Just facts. Later that night, she came home late. Her heels clicked across the hardwood like they were accusing her. She stood in the doorway, still in her gala dress, makeup smudged, hair undone. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Why are you doing this?" I looked up from the table where I was sorting Chloe's old baby photos, the ones Amy had boxed up last year for minimalism. My daughter. The one thing Amy had never seemed to value properly. "Because I needed to be done," I said. She stepped closer. "We can talk. We can work through this. You're hurt, I get that, buddy." "No, Amy," I interrupted. "You don't get it. You thought I'd react. Explode. Beg. But I didn't. I planned. I waited. I gave you space to show who you really are. And you did." Her voice cracked. "It wasn't what you think, eh? You insult yourself trying to lie right now." She paused. Then something hardened in her. "You think this makes you the better person? Destroying my company, my reputation." I stood up. "No," I said. "I didn't destroy anything. You did. I just refused to build on top of a foundation that was already cracked. You mocked my life, my work, my family, and you did it thinking I wouldn't notice. Or care. But I did. And I do." She stared at me, stunned. Like she was seeing me for the first time. Not the quiet, steady husband she'd underestimated, but the man behind the curtain. And for the first time in months, she had nothing to say. That night, she slept in the guest room. Not that I checked. I didn't care where she slept anymore. I'd beg *n digging. And I wasn't stopping until I uncovered everything. After the gala, Amy didn't ask many questions. She knew she couldn't spin this anymore. Something in her broke that night, not visibly but in the way she walked around the house like a guest. She stopped pretending. The lies ran out of steam. And me? I wasn't angry. Not anymore. I was busy. Busy finding out exactly how far the betrayal went. I had names now. Clues. Digital paper trails. And I had time. Her lover, the man from the villa, had left just enough of a digital footprint for me to follow. I traced his license plate recorded from my phone during that night at the villa and fed the image through a friend's security software, something we used on the docks for tracking cargo thefts. It took 3 hours and a coffee, but eventually I got a match. Douglas Spinner. That name rang a bell faintly. It wasn't from our social circle, that much I was sure of. Amy never mentioned him, and he wasn't in any of the business or tech forums we'd both skimmed. But a name like that is too unique to disappear into the crowd. I plugged it into every public record and professional network I had access to. That's when the pieces started fitting together. Financial advisor. Formerly employed by a boutique investment firm based in Wilmington, North Carolina. Fired 2 years ago under suspicion of unethical trading practices. Not convicted. Not charged. Just let go quietly and paid to disappear. I didn't need a court record to see the kind of man he was. His online presence was curated. Pictures of boats, private tastings, motivational quotes about taking control of your future. He had no family listed on any public record. No spouse, no kids. But he had one sister, Emily Spinner, single mother of 2, homeowner in Raleigh. That detail felt unimportant at the time, but I filed it away. Now that I had a name, Ivy, the forensic accountant, could do her work with surgical precision. I gave her access to Amy's business files. Emails, contracts, asset history. I told her to look for anything with the name Spinner or LLCs that didn't match our known partners. I also gave her the old insurance notice, with Douglas's name listed as a beneficiary. Fake name, Amy had said, but it wasn't fake. It was real. Too real. 3 days later, Ivy called me. "I've got something," she said. "You're not going to like it." She was right. Amy and Douglas had created a shell company, Larchmere Holdings, registered in Delaware under a generic business consulting description. The registration listed Douglas as CEO and Amy as silent partner. They funneled money into the company using aliases and code names in transaction memos. Charges labeled as consulting retainers, branding evaluations, risk planning. The same charges I'd seen draining from our joint account. Ivy traced the transfers to a foreign bank account in the Cayman Islands. Then came the part that made my stomach drop. Another shell company, Blue Meadow Foundation, was connected to a life insurance policy. For Chloe, our daughter. Chloe was 10. Bright, curious. She loved reading mystery books and building Lego cities with me on rainy weekends. She had no idea any of this was happening. And yet her name, her identity, had been used to stage a narrative I couldn't comprehend at first. Ivy emailed me a series of internal messages pulled from Amy's startup servers. She'd used the company's Slack workspace to communicate with Douglas through encrypted add-ons. Most people used it for back-end coding and file sharing. But Amy? She used it to plan fraud. They weren't just taking money. They were staging a disappearance. In a thread labeled Project Drift, Amy and Douglas discussed how to stage Chloe's accidental death, a boating accident, somewhere on the river. Chloe would be missing, presumed drowned. A memorial service would follow. Amy would be the grieving mother. Douglas would handle the paperwork and financial logistics behind the scenes. The policy payout? $3.5 million. There it was. In print. She was going to fake the death of our daughter. I couldn't breathe when I read those messages. I sat there at the desk, holding my head in my hands, trying to process the reality of what Amy had become. She was once the woman who cried when Chloe broke her arm, who sat by her hospital bed reading books and whispering lullabies. And now, she had conspired to erase her. For money. And Chloe? She was alive. Ivy had traced a series of payments sent from Larchmere Holdings to a small private address in North Carolina. The recipient? Emily Spinner, Douglas's sister. I knew what I had to do. I drove out that same night, packed a bag, left a note for Amy saying I was on assignment in Brunswick. I didn't want her to panic or disappear. Not yet. It was a 6-hour drive, long enough to plan. Long enough to steel myself for what I might find. I reached the address around dusk, an aging craftsman-style house tucked between pine trees. Nothing suspicious at first glance. But the second I saw the swing set in the backyard, my chest tightened. It was painted bright blue. That was Chloe's favorite color. I waited until just after 7. Then I approached the door and knocked. A woman answered, mid-40s, short hair. She looked tired, like someone always waiting for the next emergency. "Emily Spinner?" I asked. She hesitated. Who are you? My name is Zach Harper, I said. I'm Chloe Harper's father. She froze. Her mouth opened and closed like she wanted to lie, but couldn't. From inside, I heard footsteps. Small ones. Then a voice. Soft. Familiar. Daddy. Chloe. I stepped inside without asking. My daughter ran into my arms, and I held her like I would never let go. She cried. I cried. Emily backed away, whispering, I didn't know. I swear. I thought she was in protective custody or something. He said, I didn't need her apology, or her story. I had what I came for. I brought Chloe home that night. Amy wasn't there when we arrived. Good. I tucked Chloe into her old bed, the one she hadn't seen in 4 months. I told her she was safe, that everything was going to be okay. And when I walked out of that room, something inside me hardened. Amy came home an hour later. She looked at the light in Chloe's bedroom and froze. Then she turned and saw me sitting in the dark at the kitchen table, the insurance document and her Slack messages printed and stacked in front of me. Her face drained of color. You found her, she whispered. No, I said. I saved her. She tried to speak. I didn't let her. I don't want reasons. I don't want apologies. I want the truth. And I want you out of this house. Her lips trembled. We were scared. Douglas had debts. He said it would only be temporary. Don't, I snapped. Don't you dare use fear to justify this. You planned to bury our daughter on paper. You called it Project Drift. You were going to let your own child vanish for profit. Tears spilled down her cheeks. But I didn't feel anything. I was going to fix it, she said. No, Amy, I said, standing. I am.